Today on the Workplace Makers podcast, we talk with Simon Lloyd-Evans, who is a CIO, about how do organizations, employers, businesses today make decisions about IT for their workplaces, especially their hybrid workplaces. We talk about his view on whether hybrid is working or not, and we talk about his tools and his approach to managing complexity. It's fascinating to talk with him about the way that we are changing and the way we can now see work. There's some interesting parallels with technology and the way that technology is developed. Enjoy. Welcome to the Workplace Makers podcast. Today I'm joined by Simon Lloyd-Evans, who is an experienced CIO with over 30 years experience in IT and half of that as a CIO. And so with this rich background across almost any sector that you could mention, there's a list of about 20 of them here where he's helped organizations with their IT systems and sorting out their business problems. So we're exploring this IT perspective and the perspective of a CIO, a decision maker about workplace IT. What do we need to be looking at in that area? Simon, welcome. Great to have you. And great to see you. And you're joining me from Dunedin today.
I am.
I'm in Wellington, so we're halfway across the country. And you were telling me that you are working with your team there after having worked with them for 2 months based in Wellington. So you're living the remote life right now.
Very much a hybrid remote, yes.
Yes, very cool. So tell me, how did you get into what you do?
Very much by accident at the start, as a misguided teenager, not really knowing what I wanted to be. Got offered an opportunity with a computer company in the UK and joined them, started fixing things. I'm an engineer by bent, that's the way I think. So really started to work well with them about how we delivered service, came to New Zealand, did a similar role, then started into some account management role with the major trading banks when we had National Bank around back those days, and really moved from that into a more business-focused systems approach and account relationship and business-led approach. And that morphed over time into CIO roles. Would have been 2006-ish.
And it's a specialist skill set, isn't it? It's not everyone who can pick up the CIO reins and know what they're doing. So I'm just going to assume that we agree on that.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
What? Give us the dummies version of what a CIO does. What is a CIO?
From my perspective, there's too many iterations. We have chief information officers, we have chief digital officers, we have chief technical officers, all with different Gartner-orientated definitions. I don't really subscribe to that, in that I think you've got to have a piece of it all. The key point there is that it's around a business thinker, not an IT thinker. So once you get up to a CIO level, whether it's tier 3 reporting to an executive or on the executive, you really need to be thinking about the business. So a CIO, by traditional definition these days, would be more internally system focused, about making sure the organization was really running well. A chief digital officer would be focusing more on the channels, the digital channels, and how you deliver your product or services over those channels. And a chief technology officer is looking at the external application or consumption of technology by customers. Quite often you have a mix of all of those. I just stick to CIO. It seems to be the common name and has been understood by a lot of people for a long time. So really, a chief information officer, using that as the generic term, is a person who has a technical mana. So they need to have come from a technical background of whatever discipline, whether it be infrastructure or development or whatever. But they need to better step up into that business level role and understand the business. What I usually say to aspiring CIOs, I run an emerging CIO, effective CIO course through IT professionals. And one of the things I point out to them when they say, oh, what else could we learn? I do offer up things like an MBA. I don't really subscribe to MBAs per se, but the content and the value of a good MBA, I've done postgrad business administration, and there's some really cool stuff there. So what I would suggest to them is go and just take an entry-level marketing 101 course and an accounting 101 course. That's your starting point, so that you understand externally what the market is that your business, your organization is involved in. And that market could be for social good, it could be government department, but you still need to understand the market and what value you're delivering. And it always comes down to, well, there's always a factor of money. It costs. So you need to have the fundamentals of how to manage the budget, the finances. So that's really what differentiates an elevated IT manager from a CIO, is being involved at the business level.
Really interesting. Yeah, having a more strategic view, like you say, that awareness that the technology and information within the business is serving a purpose. Ultimately, it's serving the organization's purpose. You've got to be much more connected to what is that. So true. So interesting. And so what are the, do you find that there are any misconceptions people have about the role of the CIO? Are there any myths that need busting around, what the CIO does and who they are?
Yes, and they're mostly internal myths. They're myths that are generated by the industry and by people aspiring to be CIOs on the whole. From an external perspective, from the business, from external parties, there's a lack of understanding. So from a vendor perspective, CIOs are seen as project managers. That, what can I do next to sell you the next shiny thing? From an executive level, they're not really understood from a complexity perspective. There's so many moving parts to technology. It's not a case of let's just go and buy a router from Harvey Norman. There's a lot more to it. So externally, it's a lack of understanding. So it's not really a myth. It's they really don't understand the value a good CIO can deliver in understanding their business and then accelerating their business, enabling their business. The internal myth is that CIOs are a god role, that it's the thing you've got to aspire to. When a lot of people who do call themselves CIOs are elevated, jumped up IT managers, they're still thinking tech. They've missed the business bit. They've been elevated to that point, and now my title says CIO, but they haven't crossed that barrier and understood why they're there to benefit the business. So that's really it's usually an internal myth.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Amazing how we can have these assumptions based on the title. And really not
technology. I mean, it's like most industries. It's the kudos of the title. That doesn't necessarily mean you can do the job.
Anything with chief and officer in it seems to be eye-catching and ear-catching. Yeah. Interesting. So your take on the world of work is very experiential. Right now you're working remotely and in a hybrid way as well. And so the world of office workers has really had this baptism of fire in using technology to get their work done. I know that as a technology kind of professional, at least in your early life, whether you would call yourself that now, you would have a view on whether the workplace is finally catching up on the way that technology has worked in the last 20, 30 years. So do you see the workplace as finally catching up, or how do you see it?
Catching up's not a term I would use. It's around that lovely term. It depends. Yeah. So if you have an advantage by working in a remote way, working from home or in remote offices, usually if you have a hybrid model, a mix of both, it depends on what the organization's structure is, their geographical location, the sort of products and services they deliver, the culture. It's not a one-stop fits all. This particular organization I'm working for it was online meetings for the first couple of months, and that was appropriate. That then morphed into some other stuff I needed to do, which included some team management. Excellent team here, but it was about being face-to-face and actually being more personal and gaining trust. So that's what I'm doing now, is I'm doing a hybrid model of online other channels plus physically on site in Dunedin, and then also where video conferencing or Teams, Zoom, whatever it happens to be, as required. So it's a hybrid model, and it's developed because that's what's working with this organisation at this point in time with what we've got to achieve. So I wouldn't say organisations have caught up. I think what they've done is they've realised the value of the different channels and the different methods of working, and they've realised they now have permission. I don't want to use the pandemic as giving you permission, but I think from that necessity and the rapid introduction of video conferencing, specifically things like Zoom, but also Microsoft Teams, it gave people permission to try these mixed modes and realize that they worked. So now I think we've got to a point where we won't go back to a very traditional in the office model. Most organizations are realizing that mixed mode works.
And potentially has some advantages. Yes,
I mean, from a pandemic perspective, obviously managing risk, but also from an accessibility and availability perspective, people having the balance, the work lifestyle balance to manage their families, especially kids, and still be incredibly productive. And I think that you're going to sit at home and abuse being online by not doing anything hasn't materialized. And I think the litigious approach that we have in the States, which is you're literally eye tracked, in a lot of organizations to make sure you're looking at the screen and you're working for me because you're at home and I don't trust you. That's an incredibly damaging relationship just to start off with. Whereas I think here in New Zealand, we've sucked it up as we usually do, given it a go. It mostly works. You'll have a few people that abuse it, but from all the organizations that I've dealt with, it's actually been incredibly productive to the point where a little bit too much, because you're getting people overworking because it's easier just to stack the Zoom meetings.
It is incredible how meetings have really proliferated. And yeah, I think the point around how it's worked so well, especially in technology teams, is a really valid one, in that technology was one of the first areas or professions to really, I guess, let's say areas of the business to really adopt remote working holus bolus. You'd see some businesses and some areas where people would be working from home almost all of the week, or even bringing their skills in remotely for months on end. And that hasn't been that uncommon in technology, has it? It's been...
No, I mean, by its very nature, quoting that famous Turner's auction lady, online's everywhere. We are, from a digital IT perspective, it's about information, which is zeros and ones. So it's incredibly transportable. There's a very low transport cost. So for us, a lot of the stuff can be ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Whereas obviously some other organizations, there are components. The organization I'm working for at the moment does have quite a lot of physical component, and that requires physically doing stuff. So as I said, it depends on the organization, but the information component and the fact that that is ubiquitous between just about every single organization uses information, and therefore uses some form of technology, that component is very transportable and just naturally fits with an online world working anywhere.
And I'm sure that's a huge part of why it's been so promoted and easy to do in technology jobs. And there's, I think, a couple of other elements there around people having roles where they know what the person's capable of, and also the visibility. It's very transparent. It's very easy to see where the work has been done. If code's been written or not, you can kind of tell at the end of the day whether that's been delivered. Would you agree?
I agree from a technology perspective in my industry, but also taking that to the next level in terms of seeing work done, benefit materialized, organizational outcomes achieved. You could argue that being in the office was treated as a proxy for doing work. It wasn't the work. Whereas now you're not seen, then you have to produce something. It's not like, oh yeah, they're at their desk, they're working, when they're not. Whereas now they're not at the desk, I don't know where they are. So inherently, the worker's going, well, I better do something because I need to produce something. So you could argue that online is actually a little bit more productive because you actually need to produce stuff, not just turn up.
It's such a fascinating thing to look at this area, isn't it? And there are so many roles where that would be true. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. And so having experienced this hybrid work style yourself, what frustrates you with your background about hybrid meetings?
In general, most things don't frustrate me. I think things are working well. It depends. If you're using the appropriate tools for your organization. So an example would be the proliferation of teams. So a lot of organizations, ones that I'm working with as well, had to rapidly deploy. And what they didn't have time to do, and quite rightly so, they needed to get people online, they needed to carry on working. But what happened is that you ended up with an end user tool, which is incredibly rich and has a lot of benefits, perceived benefits, and true. But it was rolled out without the architectural thinking or the architectural background. So what's happened is that you've got a user-led adoption of things like Teams without the collaboration and networking behind it. So, for example, Teams is really good if you have a reasonably managed group structure of how you collaborate, whereas a lot of organizations have just got Teams and everybody's doing collaboration, everybody's groups and who's doing what. So what I'm finding out now is a lot of organizations are going back and saying, great, we put Teams or Zoom, whatever it was, we put some sort of collaboration conferencing out there. Now we're actually having to unravel it a little bit to apply some structure so that, one, it works better and we can roll out some of the other good functions, because we can't just roll out all of the stuff. It's going to get more complicated and more difficult and ultimately harder to support. So that's one of the things that hasn't worked as well as it could have, but given the circumstances, it did very well. So that's a frustration. The other one is around mixed mode meetings. Some work fantastically well. The ones that don't are where you haven't got the environmental considerations. So you might have a group of people in a room and some online, but the online tools aren't implemented particularly well. For example, they're on a small screen. Sounds silly, but they become disjointed from the meeting, and the participants aren't part of the vibe of the meeting. Whereas if you have some reasonable technology, it doesn't have to be particularly expensive, but things like a reasonable size screen, this sounds stupid, but so their head's about the same size as yours. If they're little, then they're little. But if they're sort of present in the room with you, and your audio's reasonably good and your mic's good so they can hear the conversation, and you've got reasonably good latency so that they can cut in. So it's things like trying to have a conversation and the person online has got that slight delay and they're going, and they can't cut in the conversation, which you would better do in the room. So that's a frustration for me, is when you have those hybrid models, they don't really allow online participation in a quality way. And then people go, I don't like online meetings, don't like these hybrid meetings. But then when it does work, people just, it seems everybody loves it. And I've seen both sides.
Yeah, it's a really good reflection. They're both possible. And picking up that point around the importance of managing that online side of the meeting, that's exactly what the Harvard Business Review article 8 best practices for hybrid teams, that's it. That's exactly how they see it. And I would question the word best practices, because I'm not sure we're at the point where we've got a fully established body of knowledge around this, but let's say emerging good practices, it really is so much around managing that experience for both groups, and they mention the size of the screen, and that's something, you know, we've seen in other places as well, where there's technology to replace the size of a human. For example, there's been, you know, kind of robots around for about 15 years where you can have your robot roll in to replace you physically in a meeting. It hasn't really taken off.
That's when you think about human nature, that's not going to work. No. So that's the technologists taking that leap too far. I remember with, you know, some of the Cisco stuff with the early VCs, they'd have the virtual conference rooms with massive TVs so that you will look like you were sitting across the table from them.
Telepresence rooms, yeah.
Cost prohibitive, just massive cost. Great for Cisco. Whereas now we've got cheap big screens and Teams and decent mics. It's not that expensive. You don't need all of that flash bit. So I think it's the goldilocks zone. You've got to be pragmatic. Do enough that gets you the value and then stop there. I'm one for not IT. Do enough to benefit the business and then get on with the business.
People can get quite fixated, I guess, on the cool toys. Yeah, it's a good point. So you mentioned there around the Goldilocks zone, and that could be a guiding principle, I guess, when you're making decisions around where should a business spend their technology budget. And so is that one of the guiding principles for you around what to invest in and how much to spend on it?
Very much. I use that with all my customers, depending on what the scenarios we're talking about, obviously, but very much just enough. So technology is part of one of the components or factors of my industry that I'm not particularly enamored with is selling the shiny stuff. Without, you know, it's one of those IT enthusiasms, great book, where you've got, you know, Lomanism, that the salesman is absolutely totally convinced that their product will solve world hunger. Yeah. So you have to cut through that, because a lot of them aren't being disingenuous. You know, they generally do believe, and that's cool. But we've got to understand that there's conflicting demands for investment in any business. So good governance around, you know, what's the investment, what's the benefit to the organization, and what's the risk of doing or not doing. And that's got to stack up. So it's rudimentary business case stuff. It's what am I doing and how will it benefit the organization? Have I done enough to get that benefit and embed that benefit, and the benefit stays? That's fine. Don't carry on investing. Look for the next best opportunity cost. What's the next thing that will deliver me value? And the next thing. Technology is great for just sucking up your budget and never delivering. And so I'm being a little bit skeptical there, but being in IT, you see a lot of those technology projects go off the rails because of over-promising.
It's a key point. That's really interesting, because it's promising the earth, not necessarily being able to deliver.
And your comment about, you know, some of the stuff at Harvard, and, you know, I don't think we may have got to best practice. I mean, most of the time, best practice is not what you need. It's just good practice. That's good enough. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next thing. It's not striving to be the number one exemplar in X in the world. You know, if you cut back to your why you're in business and what that is, that's what you want to be number one at.
Absolutely. And how does technology support that? And you're right, you can see how it's easy to just keep spending and spending and spending on technology because it's constantly changing. And so from a workplace perspective, what do you think that workplaces and workplace decision makers should be looking at to decide what works for them now in their workplace? I guess we've got challenges of people spending time in the office, spending time at home, working between the two sites, and sometimes working elsewhere in a third place as well. And so, you know, I can imagine we need a core kit. Some organizations may be at the point where they need to invest in their core kit. And are there any other things that you think at the moment they should be looking at to invest in? And maybe that's around the principles they apply, or maybe that's actually kit that they don't have.
Yeah, I mean, most organizations have the basic kit that they need. That you have connectivity. Pretty much every business has connectivity with the outside world. Looking at video and the technical side of bandwidth and latency and all that sort of stuff, yeah, you've got to make sure the pipe's big enough. And video traffic prioritized, and that's your technical people, your network people can sort that out. So there may be a little bit of investment there. Every computer, pretty much, most laptops, pretty much everyone, they've all got cameras, they've got good mics. So you have the basics of team hybrid collaboration of work in terms of a mixed mode workplace. So I don't think there's too many organizations that need to invest. However, do check that. If you can't produce a reasonable quality of video and no delay on the voice, then you've got to upgrade. Do not try any of this mixed mode stuff. If the video's jittery or the audio's breaking in and out, that kills the collaboration, it kills the meeting. So yes, meet those hygiene factors. Once you've got that, then the investment is more around what the type of organization you've got, what are the roles that are executed by your staff, and what's the culture and the level of trust you've got. As I said, we've got the situation with New Zealand. What I've seen is that it has worked very well versus, as I mentioned earlier, about being very much the nanny state and looking over your shoulder and, are you looking in the camera? That really drives negative culture, obviously, and a lot of fatigue. So you'll end up with not just participating in the meeting, but worrying about, am I doing enough in the meeting? Am I being looked at? Rather than the quality of work. So there's a cultural component, I think, is probably the most important to work on first, in terms of how do you set the ground rules and the trust model with your staff about how they can work. And yes, you can work from home today, or you can elect when you want to work from home. It's not 3 years ago, it was, do you mind if I work from home? It's like, why? Whereas now it's, I'm working from home today. Oh yeah, cool. Because we've got that trust model and we know actually they do work. And also as a manager, when you're seeing your staff and you've got this mixed mode model and someone's at home a lot, and as I said, you're not seeing them and therefore they need to produce and they're not, then that's a standard management issue. It's got nothing to do with remote working. I would suggest that that person in the office also needed some help. So I would be looking at the culture. Once you've got the hygiene factors, it's around that culture of trust.
Yeah, it's huge and quite powerful. It's fascinating the effect that psychological safety has on the efficiency and the ease that work happens. And like you said, focusing on the quality of the work. So amazing research around that. And so thank you for mentioning that. I think it's powerful, and it's something that's coming through for me as I talk with, say, workplace program managers as well, that we're talking about workplace, we're talking about the technicalities of how do you implement, but really so much of it comes back to what's the culture, how are things being communicated, how are people interacting in that space and with each other.
Yeah, we have the human factor of, we like to be close to people. We like to, feel the warmth of engagement. You don't get that on the screen. So you do need, I'm in favour of mixed mode. I think going into the office or having some form of regular touch point is really valuable. I think a complete online model can be mentally draining and potentially dangerous. We all had those stories of, with the lockdowns, of people that were locked down having meetings and they were at home with their cat, and that was it for 5 weeks. I have a friend of mine, this has got nothing to do with work, but a friend who went online with the pandemic, stayed online, and does have a cat, and came out for a beer one night and commented that I think it was the first time they'd been past their letterbox for 6 months.
Wow.
And it's like, you really need to get out more.
Yeah. As if there was ever a time to say you really need to get out more.
Yeah.
That's the time.
So, I mean, online's everywhere, yeah, but yeah, real people are pretty cool too.
Yeah. We come in all shapes and sizes, don't we, with our preferences for where we like to be.
Yep.
And so this, I guess, has had this change that we're talking about from a technology decision-making perspective is disruptive. I'm just going to put that out there. You know, we've seen a disruption of the workplace. We've seen new norms needing to be created. So there's a real vacuum at the moment for organizations as they, you know, employers as they make decisions around how they design their new normal. A lot of uncertainty around what do they do to bring people back to the office. What should the office be like? Should they be putting rules around it? Should they be giving people individual choice? And so for me, there's an overlap there with complexity. It's a complex situation. It doesn't have a rule book. There's no clear playbook at this point in time. So in your experience and what you've seen, do you have any insights there or any tools that you use to help you manage that complexity in organizations? Because I imagine that you're right at the cusp of both of those things with technology and, you know, with the human factors. Technology alone might be seen as complicated, but in fact, there's a lot of complexity around how it's managed. Yeah, any frameworks?
I think so it's that old, you know, comment about complexity, you know, lots of moving parts and complicated, not being very easy. And you can have one or both or the other. So, I mean, we do overly complicate technology when it's actually just complex. Technology has a lot of bits, but it's not necessarily going to be hard. So in terms of tell me if I've got this wrong, but in terms of that working model and about letting people self-determine their model, is that what you're asking?
And I guess like that from that business perspective, any tools or ways that you manage complexity, ways that you see complexity that could help decision makers to handle this disruption, to handle this complexity they're experiencing?
Not really tools, I think just some approaches, which is looking at it and recognizing that it's probably got complexity and it looks complicated, so therefore just chunk it up. So look at those individual areas or challenges and how you would deal with them individually. Sounding boards, so, you know, having someone that you're willing to have a decent chat about, you know, what those challenges are and get a different perspective. So too often you end up with what I find a lot is that technology is proffered as a panacea. So it doesn't matter what the business challenge is, throw some shiny stuff at it and it'll fit. You know, it's technological faddism, site enthusiasm again, which is the myth that technology will fix all. And of course, it won't. It just makes the stuff go faster. It doesn't necessarily fix it, as in the bad stuff that hits the fan. So my advice there is, one, to chunk it up, but also make sure you're trying to get to what the business issue is. And the most common thing I find is bad process, which then materializes itself in dissatisfied individuals. You know, the staff are not engaging, aren't feeling valued. The systems, the business systems, technology ones in particular, then exacerbate that. So they also amplify it. So therefore, throwing more or different tech at it doesn't necessarily fix anything. It may amplify even further. So the tools there, I would say, think not IT. So move back a step and go, what's the business challenge? And look at process first. Then look at the effect it's having on the culture, on your people. And when we look at people self-determining how they want to work, I'm in favor of that, because people will tend to choose the mode of work that it enables them to achieve the most, because that gives you a level of satisfaction and contribution. So most people aren't trying to avoid their job, but you will get perverse reactions with your staff. If the process is bad, they will choose a mode of working that will avoid that, because they will move away from pain. So it's, as a manager, it would be having the nous to look at that and go, what's happening here? This is organizational behaviors 101. It's why is this happening? And usually it's situational, not individual. It's external factors that are affecting why your person doesn't want to come into the office, or why they don't want to work in that particular team, or whatever it happens to be. So my advice there is not tools, it's being eyes open and looking at what the actual problem is, not solutioning it. It's like, okay, let's throw that out. Let's throw out that. Take some time and have a think.
That's a great point around the environmental factors and the process, that those are really key to creating an experience for people. You reminded me, I heard Owen Eastwood speak last week, and he's a Kiwi leadership and culture consultant who does some work with elite organizations, currently based in London. And he said he works on the basis, it's not scientific, but he works on the basis that 70% of the way people behave is created by their environment, is directly linked to their environment. And when you take that attitude, you take that approach, you take that mindset, then it becomes very important to manage the environment and manage the experience.
Totally. I mean, it is literally, I did that in my MBA stuff. It's organizational, individual, team behavior. And when you look at behavior of an individual, 70%, whatever that, the figure, we were given a lot in terms of our research and all the good sort of thinkers in that area. And most people don't want to do bad. They're driven to do bad by external factors, and they'll do some crazy stuff and completely underperform, misperform, get obnoxious and toxic. But when you dig into it, it's quite more often than not, it's an external pressure. They can't afford to pay their mortgage, their kids acting up, their marriage is on the rocks, the dog's on his last legs and the vet bill was $3,000. There's usually something else going on in their life that then morphs or transpires into how they work. And when you see workplace behavior in terms of how they want to work, and if it looks like it's avoidance, then trust your gut. If you think it's wrong, don't go, oh, she'll be right. Because invariably your gut's probably right. Back it up, but it's probably right that something is wrong.
Fantastic advice. And so where do you think that the workplace is going? Are you hopeful for the future of the workplace?
I think hopeful is probably a word. Well, no, I'm not. That's a bit trite there.
Hopeful is definitely a word. What's your word?
I think it's maturing. It's opening up people's minds to alternate ways of working. It's not, I suppose, God, that's just come to me. You could say it's like the online revolution, where people realize it doesn't have to be bricks and mortar. It can be online, but it can also be both. So it's just different channels, different delivery methods, and it depends. As I said right at the start, you've got to look at your organization in context, critically in context, and say, what is my tool bag of ways of working? Which bits of ways of working do I apply? And sometimes it's different for different people in different departments, for different organizations. So it's not a let's go online, because that's like the fadism. That's like, my business is failing. If I go online with all my staff, it'll fix it. No, it won't, because you've obviously got another problem in the business. So I suppose, yes, I do hold out hope that there is a broader understanding of ways of working, and that it's not hard to get it right, and it's not expensive to get it right. You just have to plan it and think about it.
Great point. Yeah, fantastic. So I know, Simon, we're finishing up. Is there anything you want to add or kind of sign off with as a thought to close off with what we've been talking about? Anything that's, comes to mind that you haven't had a chance to pass on, or any final thoughts?
Final thoughts would be, keep an open mind, especially if there's any sort of, there'll be decision makers watching this, managers, executives, owners, board members. Keep an open mind. From a CIO perspective, trust them the same way you would trust legal advice, the same way you would trust your accountant or your CFO. They know their stuff. If they're a good CIO, let them in, let them understand the business, and be at a level where they can truly help and influence. Too often, good CIOs are locked down, especially when they are locked down because IT costs money, so it's a constraint. Information can give you insight about really what your business could be, so use it. So think about the strategy value that you can get from a CIO, and get a good one. The other thing about keeping the open mind is, around your staff culture and your working environment, is my comment about it depends. Keep an open mind about what you are, what your organization is, and please just don't take a solution from an article on the Air New Zealand flight. You do need to think about it critically in context, otherwise you do yourself a disservice.
Brilliant. And lastly, I know you really enjoy a good meal and cooking great meals. What's your favorite meal to cook? And have you made it recently?
It's not so much what meal to cook, it's the art of cooking, and also cooking with my family. My daughter's particularly good as well. She's just got really good ideas. So I like cooking a challenge. So in general, challenges, usually good ones, always French cooking. That can be incredibly rewarding, but can have about 47 steps to just bloody cooking onions. So I love that. I love baking glory cakes,
Oh, yes.
whether it be, the sort of like a really good mirror cake, or layered jelly with sea creatures in it. Or I think the one we're going to do at the moment, my daughter and I, is we saw it on Netflix, is a sugar glass. So you basically just get the temperature right, get the glass, the sugar right on a bit of cling film, Glad wrap, over a sealed container. And as it goes on, the heat doesn't, if it's just right, it doesn't melt, it expands, and the sugar slowly drips, and then it goes hard, and you take it off, and it looks like a piece of glass. And then you put a feature cake in it, so I'm going to try that. So I like doing those really difficult things. Yeah. That is
the engineer mind that you mentioned before.
Yeah, I think it's my engineer in me.
Yeah. How you can apply engineering to cooking. Fantastic. Oh, I love it. That sounds like a real adventure, actually. Very cool. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing these insights. I know I'm excited to bring this to the Workplace Makers audience, and I think there's so much wisdom in taking this holistic perspective, taking a broader view, not being stuck on technology as a tool, but really looking more broadly at context and how to play that out. So
technology can do wonderful things, but it can also do some real harm. So think about it. So it's been a pleasure, Nina, really pleasure.
Fantastic to have you. Thanks, Simon.